Greta Thunberg was in Vancouver on Friday to participate in what we were told was a post-election climate rally. But wait a minute, I thought that Greta was just an environmentalist and that she wasn't a lobbyist or a political activist or someone who was actively trying to sway the outcome of our politics or our federal election in Canada. I mean, that's what we were told. That's the excuse we were given when she was holding those big rallies in Montreal and then Edmonton right in the middle of our federal election. Greta didn't register as a third party. She's not a registered lobbyist. But for some reason, government officials in Canada and the media have not considered this to be foreign interference in our election, even though it's all obviously very political. Greta is an ideological zealot. She's essentially calling for the deindustrialization of our society and what might be the end of our civilization. In fact, she isn't just calling for it, she is demanding it, without the slightest sense of gratitude or appreciation or recognition that she comes from the most privileged and technologically advanced generation in all of human history. But if Greta had her way, we would go back to the dark ages. We'd go back to a time with no cars, no airplanes, no modern technology, and where billions of people around the world still live in abject poverty. Don't take my word for it. She said it herself in Vancouver.
Around 50% of all CO2 emitted since 1751 have been emitted since 1992. If world leaders would have started to take action back then when this crisis became known to them, then imagine the sufferings that could have been prevented.
What Greta may not understand is that since 1992, in the past 3 decades, thanks to free trade and free markets, countries all over the world, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, in those countries, people are freer and they are richer than anyone ever thought was possible, thanks to a combination of freedom and, yes, fossil fuels. More and more people around the world now have access to food and shelter, to running water, to clean sanitation, electricity, home heating, hospitals and schools. All of this means that people are living longer, happier, and freer lives. Now, most people celebrate the spread of free markets and human liberty throughout the world, but not the far left and not radical environmentalists. In fact, this whole gathering in Vancouver on Friday was much more of an anti-capitalism march than anything resembling a movement to clean up our natural environment. Just look at the signs, look at the people who attended, look at the images. These are not reasonable people. They're not people pushing for better policies and better political outcomes. In fact, these people hate the system. They even hate our virtue signaling, climate alarmist, liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. You know, the guy who passed Bill C-69, who blocked 4 pipelines and who banned tankers from shipping Alberta oil off our west coast. No, these radical activists don't want politicians to listen to them. They want to overthrow the entire system. They want to impose their far left ideology onto all of us. The so-called climate emergency is just the latest excuse for these fringe far left activists. They already have a solution. They've had the same solution for decades. For them, the solution is always socialism and communism. They're just looking for a problem. And they finally found one with this depressed teenage girl who's being carted around the Western world, pushing hysteria, pushing a paranoid hysteria and shaming us for our lifestyle and for our freedom, while ignoring the obvious fact that the real problems lie in the developing world. According to Greta, developing countries would have to experience unimaginable reduction in their living standards. Brazil, Russia, India, and China would have no choice but to rapidly deindustrialize, producing a miserable poverty that would kill more people than even the most extreme climate estimates project. Now, here's the reality. The developing world produces a staggering 63% of all annual global emissions. Does Greta think that we can decarbonize our society without threatening the lives of billions of people who just recently gained access to electricity, transportation, and medical services thanks to those carbon emissions? Even a Stalinist world government would struggle to impose such severe austerity so quickly. And this is what passes for a progressive climate policy these days. But that's the modern climate movement. That's what it represents. A call to further impoverish the poorest people in the world and to afflict the comfortable, all to lay the groundwork for what really is a command and control system of global governance. That's ultimately what they're always pushing for. I kind of feel bad for Greta. She always mentions that her childhood has been taken away from her. Most kids would only dream about being able to travel around the world, to meet influential people, and to have a real impact in their lifetime. Greta has become this global celebrity by selling a doomsday vision of the most torqued interpretation of politically manipulated data. And she's inspired parents all over the world to drag their children into this anxiety-inducing activism. Kids used to be completely off limits in politics, but this new effort is encouraging parents to make their children into political props and to scare these kids about their future and the future of our planet. That's cruel, but not as cruel as what would happen if Greta actually had her way and we drastically reduced our global CO2 emissions back to 1992 levels. For True North, I'm Candice Malcolm.